This is Jed Distler, and welcome to the Piano Maven, your friendly podcast guide to piano recordings. I hope you've had a few moments to decompress from our mini-series devoted to the Beethoven sonatas, and I thank those who took the opportunity to subscribe to this podcast through my Piano Maven Substack page. For those who haven't yet subscribed, I invite you to do so, and paid subscribers get added bonuses such as Piano Maven Zoom meeting sessions where we will all hang out together for some listening sessions and chatting sessions. Sometimes we will have special guest luminaries from the piano world to join us. And there are other goodies available to those who take out a paid subscription. You can find my Substack subscription link in the episode description. I've talked about Rachmaninoff's Third Piano Concerto before on this podcast. In fact, our fourth episode in our first season covered the recording by Alexis Weissenberg and the Chicago Symphony, with Georges Prêtre conducting the Chicago Symphony. Recently, I was asked to contribute the booklet notes for an upcoming release on Decca that will offer that live performance from the 2022 Van Cliburn competition with pianist Yunchan Lim and the Fort Worth Symphony Orchestra conducted by Marin Alsop. This was that so-called Rock 3 heard around the world. All of the jury members were positively gobsmacked by this performance, and the performance certainly played a decisive role in Yunchan Lim winning the gold medal. He had also performed all 12 of Liszt's transcendental etudes in his semi-final round, and that also left jury members rather speechless, not to mention piano-loving viewers around the world, including me. That was an amazing performance, and it has been issued on CD. But the Rachmaninoff Third was the topic of a tonebase.co video put together by my friend Ben Lawdy, who you probably know from his wonderful Chopin podcast and also from his hosting of the Miami Chopin competition. I'm actually a part of every one of his Chopin podcasts because at the end of each podcast you see me recommending various recordings of Chopin's music. But let's get back to the topic of the Rachmaninoff Third Concerto, because I'm detouring a lot now, but I want to come back to the topic of Rock 3 because I want to bring up a recording that I just stumbled upon in my collection, and I hadn't heard it in a while, and it was wonderful to reconnect with it. It's a recording that may not be on every piano maven's radar, but I think it's quite special. It features the pianist Vladimir Ashkenazy with Eugene Ormandy conducting the Philadelphia Orchestra. It was recorded for RCA Victor in 1975. Although Ashkenazy was under contract to the Decca label at that time, he did occasionally appear on other labels. For instance, he recorded chamber music with violinist Itzhak Perlman for the EMI label. That was probably a reciprocal agreement in exchange for Perlman to record with Ashkenazy on Decca. But Ashkenazy only recorded twice for RCA Victor. My goodness, do you hear the sirens all on the back? I wonder what that is. Anyway, the first time that Vladimir Ashkenazy recorded for RCA Victor was when he and Itzhak Perlman recorded the two Prokofiev violin sonatas. And the second and last time that Ashkenazy recorded for RCA was this 1975 recording of the Rachmaninoff Third Concerto with Eugene Ormandy and the Philadelphia Orchestra. I don't know what circumstances led to this recording being made. Had they performed it in concert? I really don't know. But I do remember when this first came out on LP, I was in college, and I was kind of surprised. I was thinking, why is there a new Rachmaninoff third from Ashkenazy and on RCA? Because, I mean, after all, hadn't he just recorded this concerto for Decca with Andrei Previn a few years earlier as part of a complete Rachmaninoff concerto cycle? And furthermore, Ashkenazy had recorded Rock 3 even earlier for Decca in 1963. And there would be yet a fourth Rock 3 from Ashkenazy in 1985 on Decca with Bernard Haitink conducting the Concertgebouw Orchestra. So keeping all of that in mind, I would say that on balance, the Ormandy version is arguably the best and, to my mind, the most interesting of the four Ashkenazy commercial recordings of the Rachmaninoff Third Concerto. It's generally an expansive and rhetorical kind of interpretation. It's conceptually similar, if not identical, to the 1958 Van Cliburn recording, which also was for RCA Victor, but the Ormandy Ashkenazy is better realized in every way. Also, the sonics are much more vivid in detail and much more updated, obviously, for 1975. Also, I think that the orchestral support has more backbone compared to the softer-edged Andrei Previn recording. I can give you one example if you want to research this. At the start of that Poco più mosso section in the second movement intermezzo, in the Andrei Previn recording, the solo flute seems kind of lost in space, but under Ormandy's watch, the flute is much more prominent and it aligns perfectly with the pizzicato strings and the piano. And you get a really excellent chamber music perspective here. And I think throughout the Ashkenazy Ormandy recording, you get much more of a sense of how the piano and orchestra interact in this concerto. And I think it's an important factor because the orchestra often carries much of the melodic interest. And I think that's a matter not so much about the placement of microphones than of Ormandy's seasoned experience supporting and responding to soloists. He was one of the best accompanists ever in the history of recordings. And I think that has to do with why the climaxes seem to have more drive and power under Ormandy's watch. And I think that Ashkenazy's pianism has a slight edge over his still excellent finger work in his later Bernard Haitink collaboration, which I think is a little more straightforward and headlong as an interpretation. I think the one with Ormandy is a little more introspective. And incidentally, Ashkenazy plays the heavier and thicker of Rachmaninoff's two first movement cadenza options. He played this heavier cadenza also with Andrei Previn and later on with Bernard Haitink, although his first recording of the Rachmaninoff Third from 1963 with Fistulari conducting actually uses that lighter cadenza option. That was the one that Vladimir Horowitz preferred. That was the one that Rachmaninoff himself recorded. And Yunchan Lim also played that lighter cadenza. So did Martha Argerich and Zoltan Koshis, for that matter. I think that it's a much better cadenza than the heavier one, and it fits in more compositionally. I think musically it's much better. The heavier cadenza, I just don't like, but young pianists trot it out all the time, and especially in competitions, probably because they want to show the jury that they have the chops to play this music. But I think musically it's not a very wise decision. That's just my opinion. I know others will disagree with me. So at any rate, when I'm in the mood for an introspective and poetic and orchestrally oriented Rachmaninoff Third Concerto, rather than the kind of fire and brimstone you get from Horowitz or Argerich or Weissenberg, I go to this Vladimir Ashkenazy Eugene Ormandy recording. And if you haven't yet heard it, really, give it a shot, give it a try, because I think you will be pleasantly surprised. This is Jed Disler, and you've been listening to The Piano Maven, your friendly podcast guide to piano recordings. I wish you happy listening, and I look forward to being with you next time.